to extend a warm welcome to everyone that's joining us, and we've got a few people coming online now. Our Board Talk series are bi-monthly talks that have been designed by our community for our community. They're really hot topics of interest that our community just wants to know a bit more about, that we can help shine a light on and provide some resources and some thought leadership. So before I introduce our panel that's here with us today, I'd like to get to know everyone online. Got people joining us. And if you could just go to your chat function and enter either your name, your organisation or not-for-profit that you're from or that you're representing. And also we'd love to hear from you where you're beaming in from. Are you still on holiday? Are you maybe, if you're lucky enough, at a batch? Are you at work? It'd be good to see who we've got with us today. Okay, kia ora, David. I think David's a regular, recognise him. Got kia ora, Kate Emery, Te Aka Whai Ora in Taranaki, kia ora. Who else have we got here? We've got Lynn from the Kaipara Budgeting Service in Dargaville, at work. Oh, good. You can just put us on and listen in. Melly Wink, kia ora, Melly. We've got Caren, she's obviously one of our panel guests. Cam, Ministry for Public Enterprises from Samoa.
Hi, Cam. He's my cousin.
Hi, cousin Cam. Got Briar from Bay of Plenty, IHC Committee. No mai haere mai. So myself is in the Bay, and so is Rion, who's our support tech person on call. All right, Melly. I'm so used to seeing you, Melly, as part of our panel, but you're not one of our panel guests today. Okay, so while everyone's joining us, like I said, our Board Talk series are every 2 months. What we're going to ask you to do is, if you've got some questions, we try to be as interactive and helpful as we can. Please put your questions in the chat function, and you can either ask myself or any of our panel guests on the call today. So let's get to it. This is going to be recorded, and all of our Board Talks sessions do go on our website, so you can visit us at communitygovernance.org.nz. We'll put that in the chat function for you. And like I said, all of them are recorded, and we've had about 4 so far. We've got 2 more to go. Okay, so our panel guests with us today are Caren Rangi, Prabha Ravi, and Nikolao Cockerell. So I'm just going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and what is their actual favourite not-for-profit board that they have served on. Hopefully they don't upset too many people, because I'm sure they've served on lots. But could you just introduce yourself quickly and nau mai haere mai. So tēnā koe, Caren.
Kia ora ana tātou katoa, lovely to see you all. Caren Rangi, governance practitioner. Hey, this is a little bit like asking who's your favourite child. I couldn't possibly pick one, but what I'm enjoying at the moment is specific home care services. So an elderly and disabled home-based care organisation in Papatoetoe that I chair, been around for 38 years, started by 2 very keen Cook Islands women who wanted to see more support for the elderly in South Auckland. The reason I enjoy it, great shared values across not only the board, but also the CEO and senior leadership. It's fun. People who don't take themselves too seriously. No egos. So yeah, those would be the 2 reasons. That's me.
Thank you, Caren. And I think that's what we all love about our not-for-profits, is that we are very easygoing and fun at times, and we're doing probably all the best kind of mahi that anyone else would love to do. So tēnā koe, Prabha. Oh.
Thank you, Rose. Tēnā koutou katoa. Great to see you all, and thank you for inviting me to this panel session. Quite excited to be sharing the space with very experienced Caren and our beautiful Nikolao as well. So thank you for that. I'm based in Wellington, and I'm independent director, management consultant, and creative director. My governance experience has been over 16 years, mainly in the not-for-profit sector. So I completely agree with Caren's statement about how can you pick the favorite child. It's going to be difficult. But however, my governance has been mainly in the areas of interest. Personally, I love arts, culture, education, health, and sports. So most of my governance roles have been in these sectors. So a couple of boards that I would like to mention is Women on Boards, which is very focused on getting more women onto boards. And also I serve on Cricket Wellington, Arts Wellington, Bats Theatre, and a few other boards. So if you look at the spectrum, it's mainly in the areas of interest and passion. Anything to do with well-being is very close to my heart. And so that's why I have put my name forward for all of those boards. So that's me in a nutshell, and look forward to talking to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabha. Wonderful. Sorry for my flicking through the screen, but it's our first time of using our Zoom rather than a webinar. So we might have a little technical issues today. Kia ora, Nikolao. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, kia ora, everybody. I'm Nikolao. I am based in Christchurch at the moment. My favorite board that I've been on is Community Governance Aotearoa, most likely because it is the only board I've been on. So in that space, I've really enjoyed just the of learning that I'm having, and I think the safety of what this board is and where it's going is to bring best governance to all non-for-profits and people, or to help provide that service so they can govern really well. And best spot to learn is ones that are trying to help teach, I guess. So I've had a really cool experience on the one board that I've been a part of.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. And yes, Prabha is also our co-chair of Community Governance Aotearoa Trust, and Nikolao is our trustee and had previously served on as a steering group member. Okay, so now we're going to get into this. And like I said, if you've got any questions as we go, please feel free to put that in the chat function. We're going to start off with our first question, which is, what do we mean when we talk about diversity? So I'm really keen to explore the terminology, because often in our not-for-profit sector, you hear lots of different terminology and all around us really in governance, but we're trying to demystify the technical terms that we often use and hear. So I'm just wondering if each of you would like to share, what does diversity mean to you, and help us kind of get to what are we talking about? So who would like to go, I think? Caren?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off. I'm glad we're talking about it, because I think there's some myths around what diversity is. I think one of the myths is that there's diverse and there's normal, right? So, and I think that has a huge bearing on the way that people embrace or don't embrace diverse, depending on where they see which side they sit on, right? Are you the diversity or are you the normal? And so I think for me, one of the things about diversity, it's actually celebrating and embracing everybody's unique individual contribution towards really great collective decision making. But I do believe also the fact that diversity is just the first half of the work. It's actually how you include people in together. So keen to have a bit more of a conversation about that.
I can go next. For me, it's about the differences that people bring to the table, differences in all possible ways. When I say differences, it's not just the perspectives, but also the life experiences, the sector knowledge, the background that they come from, the upbringing, and the various ways that they have solved different challenges in their life. So all of those lived experiences, all of those differences that they bring to the table is quite rich when you are actually looking at, because governance, there's lots and lots of times when we have to make decisions, big decisions, and also respond to some of the challenges that comes your way. So when you have those kind of different voices and different views, that brings that richness to the whole conversation and being able to. So for me, diversity is about that difference that people bring to the table with their lived experiences.
Yeah, well said. Nikolao.
Yeah, diversity is a very hot word at the moment in terms of, I hear it in so many different pockets or contexts. And the way that I like to look at diversity is almost like an ecosystem, or Mother Nature is completely diverse, and diverse when living well, in balance and towards a common goal of, living, I guess. And so diversity for me on a board is everything that is unique coming together, but also going towards a collective space of, we all want to work out and be in balance. And so, that's where I see the importance of diversity, of space and thought and understanding on a board.
Oh, that's wise words from such a young man, Nikolao. So it's wonderful. I kind of think you're right when we hear about diversity, and it's kind of, you hear diversity, equity and inclusion at the moment. So these are kind of words that we are hearing quite a lot. And I'm glad that kind of the conversation has been a little bit about shared living experiences, because it's often, for a board, we're looking at, and we might get into this a bit later, but around who you're serving, so representation, and having that kind of insight into what you're trying to achieve is hugely valuable. So I think it's a lot, isn't it, into this diversity. And I like what you said too, Caren, about when you say diversity, is it, it's a bit like you and them, or the Dr. Seuss with the stars and without the stars kind of thing. So, and then at the end, everyone's kind of the same, isn't it?
Yeah, but I also take the point that Nikolao said that in boards, in the case of boards, it's got to be diversity around a common goal, right? So, because one of the other myths is that just get a whole lot of difference and it'll be fine. You still need that anchor of wanting to come together for a common goal. So for me, it's about strategically significant difference, right? Because it's still got to contribute back to what the organisation is about.
That might lead into our next question, which is, so what do you think the makeup of our current not-for-profit boards are like? I'm really keen to explore this, and how diverse are they or not? And I kind of put that not in there because everyone's experience might be different, including myself. But so what do you think our current makeup of not-for-profits, what do you think we look like?
I can go first. I think, having worked in the not-for-profit sector in the governance space mainly, I think it's very variable. It's very, very diverse. When you have large not-for-profit organizations, they seem to have a bit more diversity than a very, very small organization in a smaller space or place. It's driven by passion. So people who are really passionate about the cause come together, and it's usually friends, or it's usually a group of people who have this like-minded vision, who come together and serve on those kind of boards, smaller boards. I'm talking about smaller boards, but medium, mid to large not-for-profit boards have got, I think at the moment there is a lot more thinking around diversity, but in the true sense, as Caren said earlier, the inclusion part is still you know, they know it is important to have diverse boards, but probably there is a lack of understanding of how to go about that, and also how inclusive they need to be in that space, and how to value that voice that comes from a completely different space that they are not used to. So it's that aspect of it as well. So I would say it's very variable in that spectrum, and having served on very, very small boards and also reasonably large boards, I can say that at the moment the diversity, the importance for diversity is becoming more and more stronger compared to what it was even 5 years ago. And we're still not diverse. Are we still diverse? We are not. We are not. I can confidently say we are still not diverse enough in most of the boards.
What do you think, Caren? What's your kind of experience across the range of different boards that you've been serving on too?
I was thinking both about my own experience, but also the fact I went and had a quick look around, and I thought, I don't actually know if we've got a clear picture of what the level of diversity is like in the community governance sector. So it would be good to know, because I do think, on the one hand, we pride ourselves maybe on being more diverse than other sectors, but actually, do we know? Because my impression has been lots and lots of women, right? Probably more so than men. Lots of older people, more so than younger people, though I can see that starting to change in certain subsectors. And we're quite an eclectic sector as it is, right? So I think it's hard to generalize. I'd like to think that there's more scope in the not-for-profit sector for diversity to be welcomed. But I think, as Prabha said, I think there's still an opportunity for us to get better on our boards as to how we, one, embrace diversity, two, actually include people, and three, get really confident about the fact that diversity is a great thing. Because it's interesting, we want to celebrate difference on the one hand, but I think there's still a kind of a generally accepted practice that agreeing is good, difference is bad. And so we've got to kind of reconcile these things, right, around the goal of the organisation.
Yeah, and I think from what my experience over the last 10 years has been, and I think it's maybe still the same, but often for women in their mums, they're kind of right into their careers, certain kind of age group, can be very difficult to attend a lot of different meetings and work around the sharing of children and that kind of thing. It's been my own personal experience, so it is a big commitment. But it also opens up huge amount of networks and groups that you get to meet. So it's also one of probably, I think, the best professional experience you can get, personal development, because of that. But whether we can change, and with COVID coming on, and now our meetings are more remote and you can kind of access right across kind of New Zealand and Aotearoa, that can kind of hopefully mean that we're a bit more adaptable, because then you're going to see a kind of change in skill set and people that might not usually sit on our boards. I do see in lots of our governance programs that we run as well, you kind of see women are board members, but we need our women to move into chair roles, into leadership roles, because my personal experience has probably been men in the chair roles, lesser having a woman. So that's something that we could definitely better understand why, and maybe help just to get that kind of diverse leadership. But I kind of agree as well. It's very difficult. We've got some good stats for public sector and commitment from government to make sure that there's 50-50 representation, but we don't quite have those really good stats here for our not-for-profits, which is something that we would love to learn more about as well. So Nikolao, what's your, and I know that you've served on the steering group and then you've moved into a formal board, but you're probably on one of the best boards around, so congratulations. But what's your kind of thought? Because originally kind of we're maybe in the space of being a youth rep, and how do you feel in that space? Because that can come with challenges as well.
Yeah, how diverse are we or not? It's quite imaginative for me in terms of I don't know how diverse we are or not on boards or non-for-profit tables, but I imagine that the diversity to be in these areas has been just as important now as it was 20 years ago, but the opportunities that we live in such a open and multicultural kind of environment now, that diversity is being highlighted to be the champion that it is, and to be welcomed with celebration to have on a board. And so the excitement for that space is like, cool, let's run with this. This is something that could have and should have always been here for boards, is diversity. What I imagine they look like is a representation of the people that are wanting to help in those areas. And the difficulty is, or what I imagine the difficulty is, getting as much diversity of those people that are motivated and skilled to be sitting in these boards. The diversity is not just the one part that's needed. As from a person that wore a youth hat, my diversity was being young, and that's a challenge when you can't get younger. So in the diversity of wearing this hat of youth, I was becoming less and less diverse if that was the only diversity that I was bringing to the table. And so it was, I need to be skilled and diverse as myself. And that's where I can come in and be present and be a member of whatever board I could sit on, without diversity of youth being challenged. Because yeah, that is something that I definitely brought along, but then it's almost like I've signed myself out of it if I only sit under that diverse context.
Yeah. Can I pick up that point? And I'm also looking at JT's comment about diversity in most boards I've witnessed past 10 years has been tick box and, sad to say, tokenistic exercise. I think quite often it's been used as a really blunt instrument to say, if we get one of everything, right? One man, one woman, one Māori, one Pacific, one youth, somehow we will magically have the right combo to make really good decisions. And for me, there's a gap in the discussion there, which is the standing back to say, if you look at what our goal is as an organisation, what are the range of views that we think we need around the table to be successful? And so if I take Nikolao's point, what is it in particular that we would be expecting from a youth view in relation to where we want to go strategically? And the other thing that's blunt is because, and I'm just looking at Millie's point, none of us just bring one factor, right? We're each a combo in ourselves. And this is where the job of the chair is really important, because they've got to be the person that best knows how to activate each combo that comes along into the bigger combo of being a really good decision-making unit. And I think just the last thing I'll say is that quite often the issue of representation is brought up in relation to diversity. And I think that's problematic, because I think diversity to me is certainly where you've got a range of views, backgrounds, worldviews, experiences that you're bringing to bear on the governance. And even though you might feel you are a representative of those views, as soon as you get to that board table, right, you're not the representative anymore. You are the contributor of those views to the wider discussion. And I think sometimes pressure's put on people to say, well, you're the youth representative. You need to be knowing everything and representing every youth and understand all of the range of views there and bring them to the table.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what JT's alluding to here, is a tokenistic appointment. So you'll have boards looking for Māori governance leaders, you're looking for ethnic, community, cultural, that kind of thing. But you have to say, well, what are you looking for and what are your expectations of that person? Because they're not going to solve all of your views for you. Just because you have one person, that suddenly means that you have all the kind of expertise from Māori in particular. So we have seen that over the last 10 years. Hopefully that's kind of moving away, because it is about more real engagement, not these tokenistic kind of roles.
And just on that point, I would also like to say, I mean, being an ethnic, I'm seen as an ethnic representative, like how Nikolao is seen as a youth representative. And it's not that I'm representing the whole ethnic community, because they are diverse. Within ethnicities, there's so much diversity. And it's just one perspective I'm bringing to the table. But the skills and everything else that I bring along with it, the background and my knowledge, is what I think is more valuable. And by the way, I happen to be an ethnic person as well. So it has to be the other way around, diversity. You were bringing all your skills, all your valuable contribution, but it happens that you are an ethnic person. It happens that you're a youth. It happens that you are, so it is not, or a woman. So that's something that I think it's also a mind shift that needs to happen. Just one other thing I would like to share about the makeup of our not-for-profit boards. Some of the board sectors are very, specifically on gender, I'm talking about gender, is very heavily women-dominated. For example, if you look at education or health and arts, it's more women-dominated, whereas when you look at sports or you look at construction, you look at some of the engineering companies and all of those sorts of industries, then again it is very dominant on one particular gender. So we've had actually recently I've had an experience where one of the board we were recruiting for, being an arts board, we only ended up having women applications from only women. Not a single male applied for the board role. So that was another problem that we were encountering as well. So I think it is very sector specific. It is also industry specific.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting insights. Okay, now our next, we're going to move on to a little bit more personable. So it is around, what is your experience of diversity around a board table? This is a little bit getting into what we kind of were just talking about. So each of you possibly have come onto a board and being that token maybe role or expectations put on you that you might not have been so comfortable with. Yeah, so it'd be great to hear personal experience about what you've experienced in terms of diversity.
I'm happy to jump off.
Great.
With kind of, what that youth hat potentially was. It was something that it was a hat that maybe I put on myself, or that had kind of always been recognized as, at high school, it would be, oh yeah, you have your youth representative on the board, or your youth of board of trustees compared to just another member of the trustees. And so when I originally kind of joined community governance, I wore that hat myself because I didn't have the skills to kind of recognize that that's not why I'm here. It's one of the diversity things that I bring, but that's not why I'm here and my only kind of role. And so after kind of explaining that and sharing that's how I was feeling, it was really empowering for the board to go, oh, no, we don't want you to feel that way or to be in that space. And so with the upskilling of my governance understanding and kind of learnings of how, as a board member, these are kind of your roles and responsibilities, it shedded that hat and it allowed me to step in and be present as who I am and all of the diversity that I bring, compared to just being somebody that is considered youth. And so stepping into that space as somebody that is just diverse as myself, being who I am, really allowed me to kind of truly experience and be a part of the board as, oh, cool, I can say anything on any topic from my space with the hope that it's going towards this common vision. And that was, a really positive and a nice learning curve, personally on myself, and I'd like to think that there's learnings for the board to take out of that as well.
Yeah, I think the lesson out of that is that the extent of the diversity you bring is a self-identified thing, right? It's not what other people say. I've had many people over time say to me, I would love for you to come on our board because we'd really love a Pacific view. And I say, yeah, be careful what you wish for. Do you actually know what that is?
Yeah.
And what's more, do you know what that is in relation to the goal of your organization? If you can't articulate that to me, it tells me that you haven't really thought about why you want me to sit at your board table. And all I can then think is that it's your decision making is basically on the surface, right? It'll look good to have someone who looks different to some of the other people, but not any strategic thought given to it. So I think that's the first thing. You get to pick what you're bringing to the board table. Other people don't get to pick or assume, but a lot of assumption does go on. So one of my experiences has been, this is probably more early on in my governance career, is arriving at places and feeling people almost go, oh, awesome, the diversity is here. I can sit back now, and relax because someone can take care of that. And actually, you can take care of the Pacific stuff. And while you're there, you could do the Māori stuff too, because we don't have any Māoris and you're pretty close. So, and just thinking, wow, I don't have those expectations of you as my colleagues. In fact, I even barely know you and what you're bringing to the table, but somehow you're clever enough to know exactly what I'm going to bring, and I don't even know. So that self-articulation is really important, I think. So that's been part of my experience. As time has gone on, it's been a bit of a lesson for me to get much clearer and much earlier on. Hello, I'm here. This is what I'm bringing. This is my contribution to this board table. And this is why I'm bringing it.
So I would say it's a very similar experience for me as well, Caren. Just asking, you are an ethnic person, so you will tick all of those boxes, all the perspectives that people expect from an ethnic person to be contributing to the board. And I wonder, is that actually why I'm there? I'm also there for various other reasons. So I can understand. And as time progressed, I've also become very specific on what is really required. What are they expecting me to contribute around the board table, which makes it more easier mutually for us to understand that the expectations and also being able to make a decision, do we want to serve on that board or not? And they can make a decision as well. So that also helps if we are very clear on what we are bringing to the table. The other thing that I wanted to just look at it from a bit of a different lens, the same question. What is your experience of diversity around the board table? I'm looking at not me bringing that diverse representation, but I'm looking at what I got from the diverse people around the board table, and I have learned heaps. I would say that's been very, very valuable. The background, the experiences that they share, sometimes even options when they give to some of the problems on how we could solve it, or around the decision making, how people talk to one another, cultural differences, all of those things that even by observing and being on a board table and understanding the dynamics, the board dynamics, has been very, very valuable for me in that space, to be able to probably just be more aware of what is it that people, what are their motivations, what are their experiences that they have shared, and why are they sharing that specifically from that perspective, and what does that mean to this board or this situation we are in, or a challenge that we are trying to solve. So that's been extremely valuable, that the diversity of thought and the cultural perspective that they bring to the table. So for me, that experience has been enormously useful and rich and grown me as well in the journey.
And I think our next question is kind of going to tap into this a little bit, and some of our comments kind of coming in, which is it's around yes, you need good representation, but then we need to make sure we have the skills and experience as well to lead out for the kaupapa for your organisation. So the next question is around what are some practical steps that we can take to create diversity and ensure we have the skills required that add value. So a little bit about what, if everyone's following on the chat, JT's got another comment about representation across all levels, touch points, and diversity is about more than traits. Align with diversity objectives to your sector, industry, purpose, which is a bit about what we've all just kind of touched on, isn't it? Is around who we're serving, why we're there, and also what Hannah has kind of mentioned as well is around, I think, sector representation. If you live and breathe it or you know that community, you're going to be better informed to make decisions. So, okay, so what's some practical steps that we can undertake? I'd say probably policies. You know, people talk about diversity, inclusion policies. I don't know if anyone's online today that's got a great one they might want to share, or if we've all come across something. Is that the way to go? Is it just really identifying who you need around the table, being a bit clearer on representation, skill set, that kind of thing? How do we kind of go about this?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off. I mean, I think there's a conversation, and this is an ongoing conversation for boards, that when you're setting your strategic direction, a key part of that conversation needs to be what kind of leadership do we need to be able to achieve our purpose? And actually being really honest, what are we missing? And it's quite a hard conversation to have, right? What have we not got? And how are we going to go about getting those perspectives, experiences, styles to the table to make us successful? So I think there's a really practical conversation as part of the strategic planning. I think the second thing is around, it's around induction processes. So I say this quite a bit, that I think there's an assumption that when you bring on new people, the job of induction is to make sure that they can line up and get to understand how we do things around here as soon as possible so we can all keep moving together. And for me, that cuts right across the whole value of having different people, right? The idea is that you bring them and their contribution alongside the existing contribution can make the board stronger, but you've got to make space for that. So it's not just about new people learning how we do things around here. It's actually almost reinducting everybody to each other because you're a brand new team. And what does that look like going forward? And I think one of the most useful discussions you can have with each other is, what is your style when you are part of a collective making decision? How do you do it? Like, are you a talker? Are you a listener? Do you need to digest everything first and then come back to people? Do you form your thoughts out loud as you go? Because for me, that's probably been one of the ways I learn about my colleagues, more so than what's on their CV. And it's like whakawhanangatanga at a whole really deep level, right? Really getting to understand what makes people tick and therefore what it is that they're bringing to the table.
One of the things that we have done recently with recruitment is actually going through a matrix, having a matrix of what's already, what are the skills or what are the various contributions we already have around the board table from people, and then actually understanding the purpose of the organization and the sector that we are serving or the people we are serving, and looking at, okay, have we got representation from that sector or those people, and how do we actually find that voice around the board table, and where do we go look for it, are some of the things that we have recently done, and that's been quite successful in a practical sense of actually getting the right voices around the board table, or the right people around the board table. And also, one other thing that Sports New Zealand, for example, had done was they introduced a quota system of increasing more women, because the sector or the industry is very male dominated, and they wanted to ensure that there was women representation, and so they introduced a quota system, and I would say that they've been reasonably successful, and most of the sport organizations now have got almost 50% of women on board. So I'm not just going, it must be women, but I'm just saying that is for a practical step. That was one of the things that they identified as an issue in that sector, and not having that voice. And when you have club level games going on, and you have all kind of kids coming to the sport and joining the sport, there was a need to have that female voice as well in the sports boards. So that seemed to work very, very well. And I would say New Zealand cricket has done an amazing job. They also tied the funding to the quota system. So they said you have to have a minimum of this many women on board, on your boards, and then you will be eligible for the national funding as well. So those were some of the steps that worked well in that sector, I would say, and people were actually proactively going and looking for women who are interested in, not just for a tick box exercise, but actually who were contributing or playing the sport, or their children were playing the sport, or how can we bring them and the knowledge of their contribution, and also looking for lawyers or legal background, all sorts of things. So I would say that worked. So these were two things that seemed to be successful, and a practical way of actually moving forward with how do we make that happen in that space.
Yeah, we've got some great comments coming in. Sumati, if I've said your name correctly, but has had an experience of voting. So when you vote for trustees, yeah, I have to say, I don't know if that's always effective, especially public voting, but how do you make change at that level, right, when it becomes a popularity in a contest? So, Sumati, okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'd have to say, I would, from my experience, I don't always think it is the right way to create change and diversity, but that might have to change with the constitution. Okay, and we've got some other comments coming in. So marginalised communities, overall less experience in leadership, strategic guidance. So yeah, I think there's lots of conversations happening at the moment about lived experience, but also, you know, a lot of the work that Community Governance Aotearoa does is to help provide you with the governance skills, tools and resources to do your job well. And I think because we are very much at the grassroots, you need that equal balance, don't you? So, and I think that will mitigate the appointments, the tokenistic appointments. Like, yes, you might be a woman of colour, an ethnic community, you might be representation youth, but you've got to have, you know, build your skills up to govern well as well, because it doesn't matter what happens at the end of the day about your diversity background, you're responsible for the financials of your organisation. So that's just as important.
I think though, and I think language is really important though, because I think quite often people talk as if those things are mutually exclusive, right? That you're either diverse or you're skilled. and we know that this is not true at all. So I think one of the other practical things, and maybe this is something for the community governance team, is can we highlight more examples where having diverse views around the table has really resulted in better decisions getting made, and therefore the organisation being better off, so people can see? Because I think a lot of the cynicism around diversity is that people don't actually understand what it really looks like in action and how good it can be.
And also from an ethnic diverse perspective, you know, there is a assumption, or we are put in a space where we may not be able to express ourselves well, or we are not really we don't understand the New Zealand context, or there's lots and lots of different sorts of assumptions, unconscious bias, and that's another real barrier, I would say, in terms of being a true representative. When they go around the board table or they ask for opinion, everyone would be able to say or talk in every single topic. They may not have anything to contribute in one particular area, but they might have much to contribute in a different space. But that doesn't mean that they don't know about it, or they are just a tick box, or they're sitting there just as a tokenistic representation. So there's so much that has to be unpacked, and the barriers have to be removed for people to be able to contribute and understood. Again, that cultural awareness and understanding is a big part of that diversity as well.
I think it's important to have a range of skills and experience around the table, because it really leads to lesson of group think. So as soon as you get into the same old thinking, you're not going to extend your kind of thinking. You're not going to bring in different ideas, different ways that you might be able to promote your organisation, thing, all that kind of thing. So once you become kind of closed off and you've got the same kind of group around you, it's very hard. But having diverse thoughts and challenges is just as valuable, and that's where the diversity around the board table can really be of benefit. Nikolao? Yeah,
for the practical steps that that we can take, or that boards can take, I feel like I'm one of those practical steps. Coming into a space with, in my own mind, I'm not too sure what I'm doing in governance. What is governance? This is a learning space for me, and having the resource or opportunity to have a one-on-one mentor session with somebody that is very educated and very, very well versed in governance allowed me to recognize, governance isn't something that's unknown to who I am. It's unknown to who I am in this context and at this level. And so having the ability to relate what governance is or can be or might be in this area was really powerful. And okay, now I've had the skills, or maybe the skills have, everyone has the skills to be able to be a good governor. It just needs to be learned or re-explained in a way that is this governance context. In what I do and sit on this board table, what's my role? It's not that difficult, but it can be if I couldn't understand what those things were. And so in that practical step, I think that opportunity for someone to learn and grow and shed the space of, just because you don't know now doesn't mean you don't ever know or haven't known. It's just you don't know in this area or this context or in this language. And that was really powerful for, what I recognize as a practical step into ensuring that diversity.
I think that's a really great point. And I was thinking about one of JT's earlier comments around, marginalized communities and being prepared to invest in growing governance. The other side to that, and Mel and I have been seeing this in some of the work we've been doing in our own Pacific communities, that if you strip away what governance actually is, right, in terms of its being collective decision making, then actually lots of people have got lots of experience in this. But if you say, have you ever been on a board before? Lots of people will say no. And so somehow I think we've got some work to do as the governance fraternity to be able to value people's everyday experience in collective decision making, whether it's in their household, in their village, at their work, because all of that contributes to people really great governance. And so being and it's really getting to the heart of what I think governance is, right? Making great decisions together with other people. And it gets back to your question right at the beginning, Rose, around, why is it important? Because the more the wider the range of perspectives that you have around a decision, the more chance you've got of identifying opportunities, of identifying risks, and in the end, just having a a better decision. So I think it's exciting. And I think one of the big barriers often to really getting diversity is that lots of people don't value what they don't understand. So if I bring a perspective that in a totally different context to someone else, and this has happened to me on boards where the world I live in is just totally different to some of my colleagues. And it's quite easy for people right to say, well, I don't understand it, so it can't be that important, and therefore default back to what they understand. And this is where I think practically boards who invest time and space into really helping people understand each other are going to be better diverse decision makers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think just expanding that a little bit is I think we also have to be brave enough to say we don't understand ourselves. Like we might not I don't come from your culture. I'm not sure. So just saying that you don't have to pretend that you know. It's just being a little bit real that say you just don't know. So being open to it. Yeah, that was really great conversation. Prabha?
The other thing also I thought was really important, what does diversity bring to the table is the opportunities, you know, especially if you are in a business board, commercial board, then the opportunities that the people bring through their network, through their community, through their country, whatever that is, that's enormous as well. And so that should not be undervalued or underplayed.
And I think before we wrap, I've got one more question. And I think it's these discussions and conversations are equally just as important because it means we can highlight and shine the light on why diversity, you shouldn't be scared of it. We can encourage it. We can be more inclusive and bring people on. So I thought that I might ask before we wrap, and we've got about 7 minutes, I think, is any trends or global trends that we can consider in Aotearoa New Zealand or anything that you kind of have seen? We've had some big movements over the last few years, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, that kind of thing. Anything you've seen here? I could probably think of pay equity. Don't know. I'm trying to think what's some things that you might have come across that we can learn from.
One of the trends that I have noticed is people moving from diversity into the actual inclusion space now, actually talking about it, because for many years we've been talking about diversity, and I think people now get it that there is a space for diversity and it is important, but I think there's a lot more at least interest. Obviously, we've not even scratched the surface in that space, but there's a lot more interest in understanding what inclusion is and what equity is. And probably in another 5 to 10 years' time, we will get where we need to be in the truly inclusive space or equity space. But I think more and more I read about diversity, or when I research about it, there's a lot more focus on the inclusion now. So that's the trend that I am observing and noticing.
I think a trend that's becoming more and more, maybe not directly for boards, but definitely in the context, is it's harder to hide as a person now in terms of your intentions or where you're going. So as a board, if you don't have that diversity or that inclusion, people will question you. They will challenge you in that space and hold you accountable for, or I'd like to hope, what are you actually trying to achieve here? What's your goal? And I think that can be a really big positive, where it allows that transparency to be more flow through what people are doing to help others. There can be quite a challenge in that as well, where if the transparency is being asked for more, some people might become more reluctant to give it up. And so I think there's a big space of exciting, we need to be transparent and show where our common collective goal is going towards and how we'll get there. we need to help allow others to not try and hide what maybe is not there, more so.
One of the things I'm seeing is that the extent to which people do or don't embrace diversity is related to, I think, a broader conversation around our identity as Aotearoa New Zealand. And so, you know, what is the fundamentals that are needed for a board member in Aotearoa New Zealand today in order to do the job really well? I've been having a conversation recently with community trusts as to whether there's a range of thinking as to whether knowledge and embracing and acting the intentions of Te Tiriti o Waitangi is, for some people, is a no-brainer, right? They said, I'm a director here in New Zealand, that's absolutely what I should be doing, right up to the other end of people saying, actually, this is not something I understand very well, but I don't think it's vital to being a governor. And so everything in between. So I think that kind of sets some context for the way that people see diversity and activate diversity and actively embrace it. It's not something that's right out there. And I see it, it manifests itself in different sort of conversations. So there's an interesting one going on. This is with my Creative New Zealand hat on, right? On which, out of a fairly fundamental, just basic funding decision, there's been a discussion about Shakespeare and the relevance of Shakespeare to, you know, contemporary New Zealand. And the range of views is huge, from absolutely it's a key part of our history through to actually it's not relevant to me. So I think these bigger, broader conversations, they do have some indirect impact on the way that people will and won't embrace diversity, particularly if diversity is going to mean change.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely one that was well kind of covered too, wasn't it, Caren? Was the Shakespeare. So, and like you said, what does it mean for different people? I think I like kind of what Millie had said about the cultural, like EQ, but you've got cultural intelligence, and maybe upskilling ourselves and how we operate with engagement of different cultures as well. There's something we possibly just don't know how to do sometimes, and we don't know how to ask these things. So, but again, it's fantastic that we have the opportunity to have a panel and shine a light on this kind of conversation. So that is us, and I think we nailed it right down to last kind of couple of minutes. So I just want to say thank you so much to our panel guests. I thought this was going to be really interesting. It definitely was, and it was really quite in-depth. So thank you so much. I'd love to say thanks to the guests on the chat who joined us today. The recording will be on our website. And thanks to our sponsors, Havana Coffee. So all of our panel guests give their time for free, and they get sent a nice little coffee pack. So that's well deserved. Thank you to everyone. I think that was very engaging. The chats, the conversations coming from our audience. So loved it. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep in touch. We've got more board talks coming, and we've also got a big launch coming. So join us again. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you.
Take care.